Oh, yeah. From the morning, from the yesterday evening, throughout the night, and this morning, and now, we have lunch is very tasteful. It's a nutrition that our grandma and grandma say, share the meal that I have taught you, my grandkids. I remember that. But this afternoon we're going to have the treaty. All the wisest educators of the treaty, of the 1868 treaty, 1851 treaty, 1889, and then June 24th, 1924, that we are come to be a citizen of the United States. Then the next thing is 1934, applies us to be who we are with the education way of life. I don't know if it was forcing into us, but I will say we have a beautiful university among all the 500 and some tribes that we are. For that purpose, I very appreciate that you are the leaders. You are the eyes of us. You are the mind of us. You are the way of life for our future generation of the Black Hills. Black Hills is not for sale, but we got to do some legal proceeding to rejudicate some of the things need to be put it on the side to understand who you and our generation are. I want to say good afternoon to all the treaty people and all the leaders and all, it's you, it's us. We're going to discuss this. Make it good for this university. We could have wise and we could be like who you see today. We could be that person. We have a university that's very nice. I feel so in tie of my inner heart and my inner brains to say thank you to the Creator that we have Lionel Bordeaux, real wise educator, just like Dr. Lehman Brightman and Russell Means, the wisest of the Lakota way of life. And today, the foundation of where Sanaski. I met Sanaski when I was a very young boy. Very young boy. Oh, hey, my dad and my grandpa from here. Oh, hey, I'm going to say a prayer and my grandson that have a drum. He started here a long time when his parents, now today, the drumsticks and the echo of the drum and the way he is as a traditional. I brought my sons and my daughter, sit with them, see, come over, see what we're doing. Say a prayer in my own language, in those languages I'm going to speak to the Creator. There's some words right in my prayer. Those words I never hardly use it every day, only on Sundance, and when I go Vision Quest. So I might say some words you might never hear, but those words are the way of life of the beginning of the creation of the world, of the grandmother earth, the earth of the world. O heche tukashla, o petu kile ni walake. O yo kaye unkitiskapu, naha won kitiakapo. Akikli ha yuha nausipina yuha wonga. O taku to na ukonitia kapi ohana, nakte ohana, o heche. Wapi o kage na wapi o yusuta, horena apetukile. O heche usu akilapi na oya kilapi. O heche wos wakati awa, heche yoni ha hapina. Wichasale egna kapi, iyon kitis kapi na hena ekta lo. Lenok opsen kile na ienitis kapikte. Ona wakie chastaya hel upikta kar. Wons polo hapiki he cha apo, na chanupaki apo. Ona mitkorza la waheche. Halila wichintala. O chanupaki he opaki. O apeto de har. Hel opta hiuna. Istabi Wicawotapi, Hanka, Elsna Tipi, na Helegit. O Etanapetu Kilawanka, Tukashila, Mitaki. Aho Hasia, you had to you have a energy, Apetu Kiwanka, Wankayo, Mitaki. Oh, okay.
Energy po. Costello, please be seated. I want to thank Leonard Crow Dog for his remarks and his prayer. Leonard serves on our Board of Regents, well-known spiritual leader throughout the country and many parts of the international scene. He has a strong background, Sundance every August, good strong family, and a good delegation that takes care of him. Well deserving, very interesting individual to talk to about life in general. Excuse me. I want to thank the Rockin' K drum. Les makes room for them. Many of you know Marty makes room for them. Drum comes well prepared. Also, very strong family. Les couldn't make it this afternoon, but he'll be here throughout the week and especially this weekend. Right now he's got Chad Whitefeather and Grace Bernard, and he has Wes Neoholy Jr. with him, so let's give them all a hand. And on our video over here, filming our events here this afternoon, this week, and this weekend, we have Roger Ellert and Pauline Stormy Jackson. They're on YouTube, and right now this is being shown throughout the world, as well as in our local communities. So we welcome all of the viewers that we have, different parts of the world, as well as our local people who could not be in attendance here, but who are able to see what's going on their own local screen in their home. Every year at this time, we give thanks to the Creator and the ancestral world for who they are and what they did for us so that we can enjoy our life here today in the time that we're designated to spend here on earth. We had some tremendous people in the early days who made up the Sicharu Oyate. And the same can be said for the rest of the Ocheti Shakoi, whether you spoke the L or the D or the N dialect. Our people live in 5 different states: Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, as well as Nebraska and Minnesota. The world knows us by a misnomer, a name that was whipped on us through colonialism, and we were called the Great Sioux Nation. But you know that we have our own names, and our hope is that one day through education and spirituality we'll continue to evolve and in an attempt to bring back the original names that our people had for each other way back when. But we've had to go through a stage, I guess, in our life where we, for a while, were not even forbidden to use some of those names and some of those ceremonies that we had. But through institutions of higher learning, such as we have here and on the Pine Ridge, Oglala Lakota College, as well as other tribal nations, through education where we're strengthening who we are and doing our best with what we have to work with to regain and certainly to retain the Wolakota that we shared and is the foundation of who we are as indigenous people. And I want to thank the students and our faculty and our staff for what you do and the commitment that you've all made to sit down and to be a partner with our students and to try to not only prepare those who are registered for classes for future employment in areas of their choosing, but also so that you have a better understanding of truth and the things that our people experienced. Certainly we have a couple areas today in the area of economics and governance and treaties, but we're also open to talking about technology and community development. These are areas that await education and await leadership, committed and knowledgeable leadership that can get into these areas to lead future generations into an era of ourselves in the future where we could take a look at abolishing poverty that we have here on the Rosebud. We have 1.7 million acres of land, and yet we're one of the most impoverished tribal nations in the country. And that should not be when we have the intellect and we have the knowledge that our people have. Much like our ancestry, all of their blood runs in our veins. And certainly they lived for thousands and thousands of years of independence. And we're very healthy. We're tremendous philosophers, storytellers, scientists, you name the profession, and our people without academic education back then were forerunners of that knowledge. And in a small part today, our founders like Stanley Redbird Sr., Bill Menard, and Isidore Whitehat, and or women like Nancy Whitehorse, and the many others who, through their vision and guided by spiritual leaders that we had back then, created this institution and founded it upon a dream where they didn't know anything about education, about running an institution of higher learning, and yet they were able to put together an institution like St. Agnieszka University is really known throughout the world and is well respected in all parts of the country. We've been very fortunate here that wherever this institution has gone or what it's tried to do, it's been well received. But this institution is at its crossroads, much like our nation is. And these forums are intended to begin to reflect on that past 50 years of our existence and to begin to look at the next 50 and even beyond years that await us. We were instructed to create the vehicle for this journey of redefining and restructuring who we are as a tribal Oyate. And we thank the communities for their support, the tribal governments, tribal councils, going back to Webster Tuhawk, his administration of council back in the early 70s, 1970, December of 1970, when the first motion was passed in the tribal council to begin to look at developing an institution of higher learning here on the Rosebud. We've done very well because our students willing to sign up, get up in the morning, brave the cold. For the longest time, we didn't have buses, we didn't have meals. Some of our students even slept in culverts, come here and didn't eat anything all day long. But they weathered the storm, they hung in there, and now we're able to provide some of that transportation and at least a noon meal here to our students today. But we continue to look as to how we can strengthen and improve all of these areas. We have these forums broken down into various names like today, and our hope then is also to bring this institution along to coincide with those needs that we have in these areas. How do we sit down and take that 1.7 million acres of land that represent ourselves and vice versa? And how do we sit down and pray and have ceremonies with that land in partnership and ask permission of that land to do the things that we want to do with that land for the betterment of who we are as an Oyate? That land has its spirit, and we must always respect and honor and appreciate the spirit of that land, because in large part, we're part of that land. And the things that we want to talk about economically with that land, we need to seek that land's permission and to work with that land. Likewise, with health, we can sit down with that land in the same way, ask that land to provide us with nutrients for our body so that we have the proper foods that we need, that we can grow right here on our own tribal homelands. That's why we have the areas of economics. Technology is coming into the picture, and how do we address developing technology? What are the things that we can anticipate that's going to happen to us technologically? And how do we bring those into a working relationship with Lakota, so that we're not harmed in any way by that technology, but rather that it strengthens who we are. And those are tremendous challenges that await us. But we have the opportunity to sit down, and we have a beautiful facility here that an individual called Pat Lannon with the Lannon Foundation come here, talk to us, and wanted to become part of our vision and our dream. And he left us this facility so that our people can have a place to meet, to come, to recreate, and to do the things that an institution needs to do to have a beautiful facility such as this. That man and his organization left us $18.5 million with which to help build our campus. We owe Pat Lannon a tremendous debt of gratitude for his belief in who we are and the people. And he did an awesome job in coming here and helping him. And what we're trying to do here is also to repay him in appreciation for what he did for us. But we've had a lot of our donors throughout the country who've assisted us. But we've never really gone out and beat the bush and told our story. We've been able to work with what was there, but part of what we're doing here is to prepare and to expand ourselves, enlarge this institution, to get into land use planning, get into hydrology, to have a better understanding of what's beneath the soil. What do we mean when we talk about geology? What do we mean when we talk about archaeology? What was here before us? We need to bring all of these into our planning sessions. How can we utilize agriculture, farming? What are the other businesses that we should have on the Rosebud here? How can people living here become entrepreneurs? What are the things that we can do in the area of tourism? We own the Black Hills. We can utilize the Black Hills. The Black Hills has a tremendous amount of people who come from Europe wanting to know about us. How can we address that appropriately so that we're not in any way harming our own culture, but rather we're expanding and showing that through our culture we can also teach others throughout the world. There's so much that we have to offer as Sicangu people. And how do we share this? But there are just so many other areas. Our own tribal government, our own treaties. How do we strengthen these? How do we work with these so that the people have power? So that the people themselves can make decisions, can operate movements, programs in their own community? How can we partner? How can we all come together as a tribal people and all of us be at the planning table where we can all come and agree upon what we're going to do and be able to break this up and have that coordination and have that plan of action for all of us so that we strengthen these and we strengthen who we are for generations to come. so that the Tlacojas know that we had them in mind the day that we sat here and pulled ourselves even stronger together. When I saw Grace Smudge in here earlier, it took me back to February 2nd, 1973. That's when I started at St. Agnes College. Stanley Redbird took me out of my doctorate program at the University of Minnesota. I'd had 10 years at the BIA previous to that. I had another career lined out. I wanted to be Aberdeen area retired director one day. I was one of 5 selected throughout the country to be trained for this. Stanley come to me and he said, "Yeah, no, we changed your plans for you. We asked 2 medicine men to hold ceremonies and to come up with a recruitment for who would be the next president." And he said, those medicine men said the name that they received from the spirit world was yours. And I'm here to tell you, you're to resign your employment, you're to withdraw from the university, you're not to graduate, you're to come home with me immediately. We need you at home. So on February 3rd, we sat down in Digman Hall. Gracie, a young girl, had a pipe, medicine men all in a circle, and I was brought into the circle as the president of St. Agnes College. And I'm very thankful that I had that opportunity to have a part in the big dream that the medicine men, the spirit world, through Stanley Redbird and the founders have for the Sichago Oyate. And we're continuing to carry this forward. But we need all of us. We need that little one. We need the elders. We need everybody in between bringing your best thoughts to the table. That's what this week here, we'll sit down the rest of the year and pull all the information that we've been gathering and put them into a planning document and take it back out to the communities and begin to break into interest groups. So those involved in technology can bring their thoughts. Those involved in economics can bring their thoughts. And we'll come out of there with proposed ideas as to how to address those areas. Our school system. How do we strengthen our school system? How do we pull our school system together so that it's one unit with its own identification, but we're all on the same page? How do we do the same thing in all the other areas, in health, in justice, in housing? We have a tremendous forest here. We have a lot of lumber in the Black Hills. Forestry Department would give us that lumber. How do we set up a housing program here on the Rosebud? How do we utilize that lumber to come up with housing units, with facilities? That's a tremendous initiative that awaits our thinking and our doing. And this institution needs to get into those areas. Automation, mechanics. What are the areas that we need to expand in? If we don't have the resources, we'll partner with South Dakota State University. We'll partner with Black Hills, with School of Mines, with Harvard, whoever it is. We need to get into pre-law, pre-medicine. One day we need to have medical schools, law schools, you name it. All of these await us. And that's why we're gathered here this time of the year, to give thanks, but also to ask you for your continued help. Oakak Niga Penai, Anisha Henawaya, only Prapcha, Toke to Chawola Kotakile, Tokata Kihale, Unkpati Tamana, Gluha, Suta Hechena, Unkina Jukte, Nawola Kotakile, Cha use of Gabna, Taku Cha Chukunk, Chikilena, Yechet Dukte. Jalil, Homer, Danalia Hielo, Fremont, Phil, Atonalela Kota Lelnang, Okshanakam, Lakoti Abohenai, you are Wopilat Hunka, a chichap. Ewina Lewana, Kola, Phil just took a look at his watch, and it's about the fourth time he's taken a look at that watch. I used to be a starting center for the St. Francis Scarlet Warriors back on a 1957-58 team. So as playing center, you have to have kind of half decent peripheral vision. So even though I'm looking out here, I can see Phil looking at his watch. I don't know if that's a hint that I'm carrying on too long here or whatever. But the last time he looked at it, he shook it. So I know I better stop flapping my lips and hang it up and turn it over to you all, and I'll become a student. I'll sit down back here and listen intently. We have our recorders. So we're going to combine this morning and this afternoon. This morning, our topics are economics, technology, community development. This afternoon, we have tribal governance and treaty. So I know there's some treaty people here, but I know some people also interested in economics and technology. I'm glad to see some of our students here, but you can either come up here or the microphone sitting back here. But the floor is open for anybody that wants to come in and take the floor and give us the benefit of who you are and what you know and what you'd like to see that would help strengthen that aspect of who we are here on the Rosebud, and also help us to strengthen what we can do here at St. Douglas University to address that. So the floor is now open, or we can bring that mic to you, whichever way is easier for you. Okay, who wants to take the floor in any one of these issues and talk about what you see in that issue and what are the things that you'd like to see us do as an institution, as a tribal government, as a treaty government, as a people, or as a community to address and to see that that area of concern of yours is something that we can begin to make into reality. Yugahelo. Astelo. Cheryl.
Ho mitake viiwa chatewa stan na peo choose papelo. Ho yema capsini Phil Twigo and Machapelo, Executive Director, Sichanga Lakota Treaty Council. I had Chairman Kikshiwahi, Fremont Fellas. Aleon Petukia Takuma, Hani Tukashina, which one you Hitcha Wocekiye Eyapi Karap. Wicawotapi, 1851, 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty. So hena lehan hetchina yuha washi chunkum. Le hena yochlaten. He ohakap le Indian Organization Act ihuni naku. Sichongo ayate ki hena isa yochlaten hena washi chung. I wanted to talk about the treaties, not to take up too much time, but our grandfathers traveled to Fort Laramie, Wyoming, 1851, 1868, to sign a international agreement, they call it. It's a treaty between a nation and a nation to nation. And with those treaties is only a snapshot of what the Lakota people used to where they lived. I call it the original homelands of the Wocekiye. We know that our relatives went to the East Coast, to the woodlands, to Canada, to the Rockies. That's our original homelands. But the treaties that we signed just limited us to the 5-state region of North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Montana, Wyoming. So those are what we have legal rights to. We still have those rights. Also, I brought two gentlemen, two of our relatives with me today. I want them to say a few words. I have Steve Newcomb, one of our relatives. He's Shawnee and Lenape. And Patrick Kincaid is Cheyenne. We've been working together on the treaty issues. Let dako yahani Lakota ki wichoni heha ehani wichon ha he nachti Wocekiye Eyapi. What we're talking about is our inherent rights, how our people lived a long time ago has power that's in the Lakota language, in our ceremonies, and our culture, our history. That is our inherent rights. Our inherent rights has something to do with the time before the coming of the Europeans to this place. That's when we lived freely. Steve asked me, how do you translate that freedom into Lakota? From as far as I can understand, it was kashkeshni heha. Once we signed the treaty, hetan kashka important to remember that once we signed that treaty, we were no longer free. They call us domestic dependent nation under the what we call the Doctrine of Discovery, or the Domination Code. I have Steve Newcomb with me today to talk about the domination, unmasking, deciphering the Doctrine of Discovery. And I have an attorney with me, Patrick Kincaid. He can talk about inherent rights. You know what? Attorneys are trained on federal law, Indian law. They probably go to law school and get about 6 or 7 classes on federal Indian law, and that's the gist of it. But they don't know about our inherent rights, that our Lakota language has a power in it that makes us strong. If we lose our language, we lose our sovereignty. That's my position. We're no longer Lakota. We become assimilated. We become colonized. These are issues that we're dealing with today. Inherent rights. Remember that term, inherent rights. That's our Lakota language to me. And everything is tied to our Lakota language. So we're working with St. Francis Indian School to help with the Lakota language. How can we stand up for our rights? How can we make the U.S. government honor the treaties they signed with us? Which leads into the Johnson versus McIntosh, where the federal government says we don't have a right to title. We don't have a right to own land. Do you ever wonder why we don't even have title to the Rosebud Sioux Indian Reservation? We don't even have tribal title. We don't have a title, a piece of paper that says this treaty land is yours. We don't even have that. So it kind of resembles what they said, that we should draft up our own title to this treaty land and say, federal government, this is our land. You signed a treaty with us, this is our land. Now you think about how you're going to get all these Europeans off of treaty land. Now this is just, theorizing what it could look like. So I want to give, Fremont wanted to speak, but he wanted to yield his time, reserve his time to these two gentlemen here. And I'm going to go with Steve Newcomb first.
Kikayu yanan maningake Gishalaming Mil Ogunda Wakan Mili Ogunda Wakan Wuli Nepali Wuli Nepalinen Wanishi Gishalaming. That's just a short prayer in our Lenape language. My name is Steve Newcomb. I'm Shawnee in Lenape. And I wanted to thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to address this audience and for your to honor your college here, Sinte Gleska, and also to acknowledge my friend and mentor, Virgil Kilstraight, who passed to the spirit world last February. And Virgil was an educator, an amazing educator and spiritual man from the Oglala Lakota Nation, a headman. And he taught me a lot of things. And I was very fortunate to be able to learn from him. And I want to acknowledge all the things that he's done in his life, such as assisting with the founding of Oglala Lakota College. And, but I also want to, I won't make my remarks very long, but I wanted to say that we have an original, free, and independent existence extending back to the beginning of time through our oral histories and traditions. And that I want to acknowledge the Lakota and Dakota, Nakota ancestors of that time, back to the beginning of time through the creation story, and the evolution of the language, of the Lakota language and the Lakota spiritual way of life, which Virgil said was a perfect way of life within your territory, based upon the 7 laws, Wope, and the 7 sacred rituals, the sacred ceremonies, the 7 sacred sites, and all of the things involved in that spiritual way of life. The contrast to that perfect way of life, a spiritual ceremonial way of life, with deep appreciation for all the elements of life, is a system that was brought by ship across the ocean from a place that the Europeans called Christendom, or the Christian world. And they brought with them documents, such as Vatican documents issued by popes in Rome. And there's language in those documents that I've been studying since 1989 in Latin and English. And that language system is a language system of domination and dehumanization, to treat people as not fully human. to claim that they have a right of domination over everyone and everything wherever they're able to arrive, wherever they're able to travel by ship. As an example of one of those documents from 1452, the Papal Bull Dum Diversus, Pope Nicholas V told the King of Portugal he was authorized to send his men, his soldiers, to the western coast of Africa and to invade, capture, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens, pagans, and other enemies of Christ, to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to take away all their possessions and property. And that document was issued many times, that language was issued many times. And it was also issued by Pope Alexander VI numerous times in 1493. And it said that the barbarous nations were to be reduced, which is part of the dehumanization process. The United States Constitution has a context, a historical context. And that historical context is the very documents that I'm telling you about today. That language system of domination and dehumanization is the context for the United States Constitution. It's the context for a Supreme Court ruling from 1823 issued by Chief Justice John Marshall and the rest of the Supreme Court, including a man named Joseph Story. And in that decision, it says that they have the right to claim, they meaning the United States, have the right to claim a right of domination over everyone and everything. And he calls that ultimate dominion. When you look at that word dominion, the root of that word is dominio, which means to dominate. And it's connected to a word domo in Latin, D-O-M-O. And domo has 7 meanings: to subjugate, to subdue, to force into subservience, to tame, to domesticate, to cultivate, and to till. To cultivate in Latin is colere, which means to colonize and to design. When you take that word colon, the colonization, and you break it down, the word colon is the digestive tract. The colon, and each and every one of us has that in our body. But there's something in European language that they call the body politic, which is a collective body of their people. And they say that they have the right of digestion to go forth and to devour and consume everything and to mine everything, because that word colon has a root, C-O-L-O, which means to filter out impurities in the process of mining. So the backdrop for all of it is mining, to mine everything, to mine the people, to mine the minerals out of the soil, to mine the Black Hills as an example. And they're entitled in their own mind because of those Vatican papal documents that gave them that right of domination in perpetuity. In Latin, they call it perpetua, which means eternally, forever. So that's the context within which the United States government has been interpreting all Indian treaties with Native nations. Rightfully and truly, the United States government, when it entered into those treaties with the Ochetishicoan, the Great Sioux Nation, the 7 Council Fires, they acknowledged and recognized the original free and independent existence of the Ochetishicoan. That's the way that should be. That map, that whole area of the Ochetishicoan within that 1851 and 1868 boundary, just to take one example, that's a country in the world, like any country in the world, like England, France, Portugal, Spain. When they first made those treaties with the Wicawotapi, if you go to the Denver Public Library and you look at the old maps, you'll see that they're immediately putting survey lines. They're immediately putting county lines into that area of the Wicawotapi territory, but they have no approval to do that. They have no permission to do any of that. It's all completely illegal. Plus, there's no such thing as a right of domination. No such thing as a right of domination. And when we say that to them, then they have to say, yes, there is. Or they have to say, no, you're right, there isn't. But if they say, yes, there is, then they have to show the rationale that they're using, the justification that they're using to say they have the right of domination over our nations and peoples. And if they're going to point back to their Bible, or they're going to point back to those Vatican papal documents, then we have to come up with a counter-argument to say, no, no. You have no right to come into someone else's country or territory uninvited as invaders and assert that you have a right based on your deity or your understanding of some invisible being that supposedly gave you permission to go forth and subdue and dominate the planet. So these are some of the things that my findings have brought me to understand, and some of the things that I was working with Virgil on all these years, to take that information around the world, to say to the whole world, the planet is in the grip of this domination system. But now we have the opportunity to know that and to challenge that on the basis of Lakota and the 7 laws, which are, generosity, honor and respect, compassion and pity, bravery and courage, patience and fortitude, seeking wisdom and seeking understanding, that spiritual way of life. So I apologize for speaking of your traditions to you because I'm not of your people, but I'm just letting you know some of the things that my friend and mentor taught me. And I thank you very much for your time. And that's probably all I will say for right now. So, Wanishi, Wopila.
Good afternoon. My name is Ishi Hotne, and my U.S. citizen name is Patrick Kincaid, and my prisoner of war name is Carlisle. I am not an enrolled member of Sechangu, but I have relatives that are enrolled here. My grandfather was a non-signer named Bear Robe, and this is one of the places that he hid out. And as a result of that, I found myself being raised in an urban household of $2,500 a year, and somewhat felt inferior going through the school system with being the poorest, and having a different understanding of life, and not being explained to me, not having the community. And so my journey has been somewhat of a pilgrimage back home, and so it's a real honor to be here with our spiritual leaders and our academic leaders and our treaty folks here, and the youth and the professors. I'm just real honored to be here right now, and I just wanted to say that. I have recently been asked to participate in helping develop a legal program here at the university, and so we now have a grad school class offered here in law, and we also have a undergrad offered. So I encourage the students and in the community to maybe participate in that classroom, because it's taught. You learn all of the colonial law that has been preventing us from being able to exercise our treaty rights, but it'll be taught with a concept of the institutional racism, which kind of allows a decision maker in the community to decide, do we really want to go with this narrative and legal strategy? And it'll also be taught with how they implement, how the colonial government implements these racist doctrines. So in colonial Indian law, there's really only two rules. And one of them Steve just shared. It's the doctrine of colonial domination. That's how they validate Supreme Court jurisdiction. And then there's only one other rule. It's plenary power. But plenary power really just means that it takes a congressional act to take away a right preserved by treaty. Now this is a construct. There's no truth in regards to this rule, but when we go to a university that is run by the state, there's agendas there. And as we began to learn federal colonial Indian law under a state jurisdiction, we began to believe this is the truth. And we began to believe there's no other options. And the reality of it is that there's several options that we're not learning in these constructs. And I say constructs because when you look at these different jurisdictions, you have the Wocekiye Eyapi's jurisdiction here. You have the international jurisdiction here. You have the federal jurisdiction. You have a state jurisdiction. All of those have different rules and different strategies to succeed in moving through those legal vessels. So we have to consider the layers of the onion here when trying to preserve our treaty rights. What a treaty is like Phil said, it's an international instrument between nations. So it falls under the international jurisdiction under the laws of nations, not under human rights, not under the United Nations Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples, but as a nation of peoples, a treaty. When we approach this outside of that construct, the international jurisdiction, and we try to approach it in a federal jurisdiction, a federal construct, United States Supreme Court, even though there's two rules, discovery doctrine, plenary power doctrine, they began to change the rules as they go with no precedent. And that's why everybody's confused in regards to what the law says, because the law doesn't have any. The Supreme Court is conflicting in their narratives. Yeah, there's a Supreme Court decision that says we don't have inherent rights. That's the Montana case that's always in front of us, 1981. But then you have a Supreme Court in 1986 that says it takes a congressional act to break a treaty right. Now again, they're both human rights violations, but I'm just bringing it up to share with you the institutional racism of the federal court system. And is this a system we really want to be prioritizing as the vessel to protect our treaty rights? When you look at the 1851 treaty, and it's a collective, it's an agreement with the United States under the laws of nations that's still binding, that where the United States agrees to not interfere with the inherent rights, which are the collective rights of the Wocekiye Eyapi. When we look at the 1868, it doesn't end the 51 treaty. It's just a different contract with the United States that says, here's the collective rights of the Lakota Eyapi. So they both work hand in hand. It's not which treaty, 1851 or 68, it's both of them. And under the plenary power doctrine, which again is a racist construct, it takes a congressional act to take away any of those Fort Laramie rights. And none of it, there's never been a congressional act take away the inherent rights preserved by the Fort Laramie Treaty, which means we still have all the rights according to their law. So I'm urging the youth not to give up on the treaties, because there is no law that says they're not valid, and even if there was, that law wouldn't be valid under the laws of nations. So if we can understand these different jurisdictions that we move in and out every day, let me give you an example of when the tribal council is acting both with using their inherent rights and using delegated sovereignty. Let's use the economic development example. When you do a Section 17 business, your business is structured under the jurisdiction of the federal government. They have given you a business charter. So you're subject, you have voluntarily agreed to do business and comply with all these racist rules that are conflicting with each other. But you get sovereign immunity and tax immunity also with a tribal LLC. And a tribal LLC is a business charter that the federal government recognizes that is under the jurisdiction of the Oyate. And you still get tax immunity and sovereign immunity. But now, according to the federal construct, the powers that be in the federal jurisdiction can't say you're in violation of their law because you're not under their jurisdiction. So that's one example of how we can begin to change the game here. But it requires understanding these colonial constructs. Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution says treaties are supreme. Now, we're not under the Constitution. The Oyate is not under the Constitution. Maybe in your legal status as a U.S. citizen, you're under, but as individuals, we have different statuses. We have a U.S. citizen status, we have a tribal member status, we have a status as a third-party treaty beneficiary, we have a state resident status, we have a state driver's license. So we're in these multiple jurisdictions simultaneously, but jurisdiction is power. When as a peoples, when we're not regulating our own jurisdiction exclusively, we're allowing the colonial racist constructs to be imposed upon us. So we have to start worrying about our narrative. And our narrative is the 51 and 68 treaty. And we have to hold them accountable to their racist constructs as well. And those under their law, those treaties are still valid. Law can be political or practical. What does the law say? That's political. How is it practiced? That's practical. So when we're dealing with a right preserved by treaty, the U.S.'s political law says it's still there. But practically, they're trying to keep us from exercising it. So how law is practiced and what the law says are two different things in Indian country. I suggest start using your narrative of treaty in the consultation, and it can also begin to unify us. And we come in and we say, look, we're not under Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution that says treaties are supreme. You are. You're in violation of your own rule. When we go in to deal with Dewey Burdock or XL Pipeline or the water permit, these are all treaty violations. Why are we asking some environmental law attorney to come file a claim on cultural resource consultation when it's a theft or trespass issue? And then pay that guy $800 an hour to lose for us. We got to rethink and re-strategize and not give up on the treaty approach. Come into that consultation meeting with the traditional government, with the IRA government, with the other federally recognized tribes, with the non-member descendants, together, all as different political entities of the Oceti Sakowin, and tell that lead agency official who's permitting your water illegally, permitting the pipeline illegally, allowing your Black Hills, leasing mining in your Black Hills illegally, and let him know that he is in violation of an express duty. Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution says treaties are supreme, and that means supreme to the federal agency rules that have been promulgated that this lead agency official thinks is binding. Get their attorney in the room and then let him know, put him on notice, because if you're disobeying the law as a government official, you're not acting in an official capacity, you're acting in an individual capacity. And that means you can sue that person. And if you can speak to that lead agency official in a way that he understands what the law says, he's only making a salary, and that's the only reason that lead agency official is there. There's not a spiritual investment for that government employee. Once he finds out that he's not protected by the federal government sovereign immunity shield, he's not going to approve that lease. And you haven't spent money hiring an attorney, you didn't have to go to court, and you stopped the injury from happening. That's one example of how to use treaty. And we've got to get creative when using treaty from this point forward, because their law still validates it. And of course, ours definitely validates it. So I don't want to take any more time, but I just wanted to emphasize to the youth, don't give up on the treaty approach, because it's valid still in all of these constructs, including the racist constructs. We just have to hold them accountable to their laws, which means we have to learn their laws. Doesn't mean we have to apply their laws or obey their laws. It just means we have to learn it so we can hold them, so they can't BS us. So with that being said, thank you.
I just have a little closing comment. We have some work to do internally as the Lakota Eyapi, and that has to deal with our inherent rights and doing something about our Constitution. Here we are, we're trying to fight for our treaty rights, but in our Constitution, we still have the Secretary of Interior on our Constitution. We want to exercise our inherent rights. I want to remember our traditional government, our traditional leaders, chiefs. When 1934 Act, the Constitution was approved, it split our people in two. It left the traditional government out, and it put in place a democratic election process and made our tribe a federal corporation. It's a Section 17 corporation. The tribal council, I might get disciplined for this, resembles that of a board of directors. If it wasn't for our treaty councils, in the old days, they were the chiefs that kept the Lakota tradition, the language, history, and culture. They kept it going. So let's devise a new constitution. Let's create a working group to design a Sichago Lakota government based on our tradition. What happened was when they split us, it split us in two. So now, let's bring it back together. Put it back together. My Transhi Kanrishunga, Kodog, he has a lot of knowledge, spiritual knowledge. Spirituality is powerful. We have to hold on to that. He's the keeper of our ceremonies. Where's our young men? we have a rite of passage that they need to do. Every young man in this Sichago Lakota Eyapi should go on Hamblecha to find themselves, to help find our nation. They should be going on the hill and praying for us. Every young man in every Tiwahe. That's where our power is, our language, our history, and culture. Pilama apelo, metake asu.
Ya otro kaya Lakota waga lakin lel otana ka okina oyakach ni gabshne Lakota oyakach ni gabe okipshne. See that's the back in the 1880s, kill the Indian, save the child. Carlisle and these missions, Episcopal, and fortunately for me, I had my grandfather, who was principal chief of this reservation. I've got his pictures here. This man up there is my great-great-grandfather. There was a man by the name of Dick Miller that did a biography. It says, Whirlwind Soldier, the oldest son of the old Chief Spotted Tail. This is a biography, government records. And then he called me and said, how can that be when there's 10 years apart? So I told him that my great-grandfather, I've got his picture here. If you want to be an itchachon, you got to have one of these. You got to have a bonnet, which I do. And this belonged to my great-grandfather. He was one of the principal chiefs of this reservation from 84 to 1913. I've got his picture here. The cane that he's holding is right here. You've got to know your history. And I always tell the people, Lakota people that don't understand the Lakota language, you better find out who you are. Because during the Clinton administration, he said, if you don't speak Lakota, you're assimilated and don't know, almost accomplished it. This is a picture of my grandfather, George Whirlwind Soldier. This man here is the original. He earned that name, Whirlwind Soldier. My grandfather was a principal chief from 1913 until the IRA Act. We're interior Indians. That's something that you guys have to understand. The only treaty people, reservations, is Ogalalas and Ihunktuas. Ihunktua, you know, the end. The Big Dipper is our symbol. Ihunkpa is the handle. And Ihunkpapa. You know, I know all of this. I was born in 1936. 1962, this is my wife's grandfather, Chief Hollowhorn Bear, Jacob Kilsenside. 33 chiefs got together and put that bonnet on him because of his grandfather. He asked for the Black Hills back. 1962. Unfortunately, he was assassinated that same year. The principal chiefs of this reservation came out to where my dad's ranch was and I was very young yet. But you're going to be a helper of the people. And put the bonnet on me, 4 of them. So I can kind of brag, but I don't brag. I just, and I also know Ben Carson, Secretary of HUD. Because when he was campaigning, he said, I was helping him, and he said, if somebody doesn't believe you, show him this picture. And in that, he says, Dear Homer, you are an inspiration to me, a true patriot, and a shining example of the best America has to offer. Ben Carson, now he's Secretary of HUD. So I have all of this background. Now, I think I talked to Linnell about it, and I'm going to read this, the old saying that Black Hills is not for sale. You know, we're the landlords. We own the Black Hills by treaty. The 1877 Act, the Supreme Court ruled against it. This is a statement from Spotted Tail during the conference. And I'm looking for that book now, and I went to the bookstore and see if they can locate that book. The conference itself between the commissioners and the Sioux tribes. Spotted Tail. As long as we live on this earth, we will expect pay. We want to leave the amount with the president at interest forever. By doing that, I think it will be so that I can live. I want to live on the interest of my money. The amount must be so large that the interest will support us. Part of this each year I can trade for something to eat. I will trade part of it for enough annuity goods to go around. I will trade some of it for annuity stock to raise cattle. I will trade some of it for hogs. I will trade some of it for mares to raise horses. We want some good cattle every year. I want some ammunition too, powder and lead. Every year we want some guns. If the Great Father does this while I live, then I will get paid for the land. We want some clothes as long as any Indian lives. If even only 2 remain, as long as they live, they will want to be fed, just as they are now. As long as they live, they want tobacco, knives, and then it says, until the land falls to pieces, then we'll give it up. The 1877 conference, they thought they were leasing the land. And then my grandfather had a cavalry captain for a friend, and he read it. And he said, you are giving your land away. So what he did, he sent writers out to all the Itchachans, and you mentioned that, 1923. That's when Francis Case took over, and he sent writers out, and when he said land cession, he said, anybody signs that, kill him. Red Cloud the same way, all the other chiefs. So this, in 1923, signatures required was 3,693, total signed 240. Total male population, 5,924. That was what happened. That was why we won that in the Supreme Court. In 1987, we sought to recover the Black Hills. We're the landlords. We own it from forever, from the 68 treaty. So we started, and Phil Stevens, one-eighth Sioux. His grandfather was Standing Bear. So I got all the Standing Bears to get together, and we started that. But it was a bill called the Great Sioux Nation Bill. The media and the tribal presidents called it the Phil Stevens Bill. That divided us right away. 1989, now the reason why I know all of this is in 88 I went to Standing Rock. Charles Murphy told me to get out of the building. That was a council meeting. Now there was one man gets up and he said, wait a minute, we tell you what to do, you don't tell us what to do. And they voted and they assigned Joe Walker and Reggie Birdhorse to represent the people. Went to Cheyenne River the same way. Wayne Duchesneau ordered me out of the council hall. And I remember that man very well. His name was Sam Eaglestaff. He gets up and he says the same thing. We tell you what to do, you don't tell us what to do. So the council elected Sam, I don't remember the other ones, but there were 6 elders and 6 elderly women that represented Cheyenne River. And same way down Rosebud, Mr. Alex Lenderman was the president. He totally refused to cooperate. So what I did is I went and got 14 community resolutions. Those council people from those communities voted against their own people. So in 1989, I don't know if you call it a Martinez bill. It was going to go in front of the council, 1989. If anybody went to that 1987 at the Civic Center, that Civic Center, I wish Russell was here because he was there. That place was packed. People. And tribal governments refuse to act for the people. And that really burns my heart and breaks my heart. So when we went, Congressman Martinez from California was going to introduce it, and he used these 14 resolutions from Rosebud. But Gerald Clifford, Charlie Murphy, Wayne Duchesneau, Alex Lunderman went to Washington, D.C. and said, Phil Stevens and his people, which was us, don't represent us. So that went down, 1989. I've got a again in 2016, and I think you said Obama was dead duck, he's not going to do anything. We said that right in front of Napa. 2016, Obama said, bring all the chiefs and the tribal presidents up, and we'll talk about it, and we'll return the Black Hills. Executive order. This never went anywhere. Willie Kendall was supposed to take this to the tribal presidents and present it, but he never did. So that went down the tubes. Now nobody likes Donald Trump. He wants people to work. I'm a Republican. Just recently, he said most notable of these 3 bills is the passage and signing of the National Defense Authorization Act that granted federal recognition to the Little Shell tribe of Chippewa, Indians of Montana, gave their land back. There was another tribe in Oklahoma did the same thing. That's Donald Trump. Now, our brother Phil Stevens, Donald Trump is ready to negotiate with us. But again, I think we're our own worst enemy. So it bothers me a great deal when we fight amongst each other. That's the problem we have here. The Red Cloud basically said the same thing at that, and Spotted Bear. So I'm looking for the book. And there was a friend that sent me that page in 1988, and I should have asked him what book it was. So now I have our bookstore here at the college, university, to look for that book. And I want people to know that we're the landlords. We still own the Black Hills. Back rent, you know how much money is in there now? $1.3 billion. Future rent, $4 an acre on 7.3 million a month. And they're ready to negotiate with us. So again, it bothers the heck out of me when people refuse to act on it. That bothers me. And we don't have to be suffering. I've got diabetes and I know how to take care of myself. But the hospital, man, I mean, we need really good care, but we don't get it. And with this kind of money, we can do that. We can buy the land back. And what the thing is that Congress didn't have no business homesteading the 6 million acres. It's still ours. And what Lionel talked about, he talked about how they will be able to pay it back. And our act was, no, we charge the government back rent and future rent. $4 an acre per month. Future rent is still ours. We're the landlords. And we're not going to kick those people out. If they want to sell, we have the first action to buy. First refusal to buy, they call it. That's what I wanted to talk about. And for years, you know, just this man here died in 1975. Principal Chief of Rosebud, 1975. He asked for the Black Hills back from John Kennedy. John Kennedy was here on Rosebud. Did you know that? He was here. That's and Robert Kennedy came down too. I know all of that. So here we are, and I really appreciate what you guys presented. And I wanted to present this because I know who I am. I know who I am. So I've got, there was another thing that when I talked this way, somebody on this reservation thought I was BSing. So they hired this guy to do a biography of Whirlwind Soldier. I don't have to pay for it because he sent me a copy of it. So Pila Mayalo Misumino, he's my little brother, or younger brother. Misumkala, he's 80 years old, I'm 83. My grandfather's brother, Clement Whirlwind Soldier, was married to his grandmother, one of his grandmothers, Martha Bordeaux. In 1917, the Interior Department terminated half-bloods. If you had an Anglo name and were one half, you were terminated. 1917, Interior Department. And it was caused by a small group of mixed bloods that wanted to control their land. And then, of course, the Reorganization Act came in, and even the Reorganization Act says one half or more. And I've got a law that says, the Congressional Act says if you're one half or more, you're considered full blood. That's what the United States Congress did. So I've got all of these records. My grandfather said in the future you might have to use this to fight for your people. But it said, Wocekiye Eyapi, you help other people. So I became a contractor, construction. I took care of people. All of these houses here I helped build. 2000 to 2005, I remodeled 14 houses at no cost to those people. But I don't brag about it. Those 14 people know what I've done. So here I am, I'm just an ordinary person. But I do have history. I do have history. His father was named Spotted Bear, daughter of Tangled Hair. Daughter married him, and then out of that came my grandfather and him. So he's the one that saved the Black Hills, Red Cloud, and all the chiefs. So anyway, I just wanted to present that. I told my wife, I said, you present that and get the heck out, because they're not going to listen to you. And that's in a sense true, because we talk and don't do nothing. We don't do nothing. So we're going to try again. And I told Phil, he's 91 now. You know, this man was the executive director of the Minuteman missile system for the Air Force. Now he's, the Tomahawks, every time they fire one of those things, he's the father of the guidance system of that. Powerful man, rubbed shoulders with presidents. And he said, before I die, I want to recover the land back for the Sioux. I mean, the guy's a mega millionaire, worth $86 million. And he's my brother. He adopted me as his brother. They don't like him because he tries to help us. Now, my Lekshi Leonard, that's blood too, because Hong Kong ceremony, his mother adopted my dad as her son. So he became my uncle. And in 1929, Alex Bordeaux, Jr., he was cast out, he was terminated. So my grandfather, George, Whirlwind Soldier, and Clement, they did a Hong Kong ceremony and they brought him back in. That's how Bordeaux's kila taku shoy mikalauke. I want you to know that. So anyway, thank you for listening. And I hope, I gave him all of the papers that I had about recovery. The part I read about what Red Cloud said, what Spotted Tail said, what Spotted Bear said. So thank you very much for listening, and I hope we can do something. Pilamaya Pelo.
Wocekiye le takwa wakpasok tayong ka. I did a research paper way back in the 90s, and I broke down an Article 10 from the 1868 treaty, and I'm going to right now demonstrate how you can get one article or a treaty and break it down article by article so that you have a full comprehension of the whole treaty. Okay, so my paper that I did had to do with Woyute, the food resources. And the question was, has the federal government fulfilled its treaty obligations to the Sicangu? And that is addressed in Article 10 of the 1868 treaty. And what I did was I got an estimation of subsistence patterns and population sizes of the Sicangu from the 1700 to the present at the time that I did this. And so I could determine using this to see if economic status quo has been maintained in good faith by the federal government, and we'll see what happens. So the initial limitations that I had was that there's very limited data about Sichangu lifestyles prior to European contact. I had nothing to go on but a lot of oral stories, no recorded data. As the relationship between the Sichangu and the government develops, more statistical information becomes available for analysis, but data is still at times inadequate. So the time frame that I used was 3 time designations. Number 1, 1700 to 1800. Number 2, 1800 to 1900. And then number 3, 1900 to the present, the time that I finished this project in 1997. So I had the 3 time frames. And the methods that I used for each time frame went like this. I needed to establish how population size is estimated. I needed to determine how primary subsistence resources are utilized. And then I had to look at the means by which food resources are obtained for each time frame. Now the historical context, I needed to see the indication of the population changes of the Sichangu, and then to specify subsistent patterns of the Sichangu, how they got their food. Speculations and conclusions will then be extrapolated from the data that I get to provide a standpoint against the research thesis. So let's look at 1700 to 1800. The historical context that I had before me was this. The Sichangu Eyapi were a prospering nation both in material and social culture prior to European contact. So we were doing well. We were doing good. The ability to locate, obtain, and process high volumes of food resource. And for that, for us, it was the tatranka, the buffalo. This system allowed the Sichangu to dominate the plains until the Washichu began to exploit the resources on the plains. Now the methods here within this time period, there was limited record, hardly any written documentation about Sichangu during this era. The information was derived by using estimates found in text and oral accounts. The population estimates went like this. The northern plains in 1780 supposedly had 100,800. The southern plains in 1690 located 41,000. Now the revised estimates here were the northern plains at 140,000, 112. Southern plains 246 and 40. And this was done by a man named Reddy. The Dakota-speaking people in 1780 numbered only 25,000. But I'll show you in a minute how they got those numbers. And I got this from the American Indian Almanac. The subsistence. The Lakota Eyapi experienced new levels of skillful kills. So before the introduction of the gun and the horse, which greatly enhanced big game hunting, all we had were the buffalo jumps, in which the people would make the buffalo jump off a cliff, and some of them would kill them on the bottom, and then everybody, the whole community was involved in this. They would go out and process the food. The American bison was a major source of subsistence. It provided the volume to feed a nation of people. And American bison, right around this era, were very, very big. So they produced a whole lot more than the bison would today, the buffalo would today. So other animals, like the deer and the elk, they were hunted seasonally to supplement the bison diet. The hunts were planned and conducted in groups, in communities, or tioshpayas. The meat was processed for storage to last the winter months. And again, here, it is very difficult to determine the number of buffalo required to feed a group throughout the winter. So it kind of depended on the size of the animal itself as well. However, it is possible to get a scope of the amount of meat consumed by the Sicangu prior to the virtual extermination of the buffalo. In 1871, Chief Spotted Tail negotiated with the United States government for 3.9 million pounds of beef to feed his people. An average of 1,000 pounds per buffalo. Spotted Tail's band had to kill 3,962 buffalo a year to survive. And I got this from Dr. Bride. The Lakota Eyapi were used to a very bountiful supply of woyite, the food, prior to being confined to reservation boundaries. So we were doing well. Okay, let's look at the time period, 1800 to the 1900, and the historical context. The government exterminated the buffalo by then to ensure the dependence of the Sicangu. So they killed out all the buffalo so that we had nothing, and we depended on the government. The lifestyle of the Sicangu drastically altered after years of war with the Anglo cultures. The Treaty of 1868, Article 10 states, the provisions to be provided by the U.S. government to the Lakota who moved on to the reservations. However, from earliest accounts, and I found even more after I put this together, I didn't get to change it, however, or add on. However, from earliest accounts, only percentages of the rations were ever issued to our people, the Lakota. In addition, the rations were used as leverage in negotiations by the U.S. Army forts who were supposed to issue the food. So we were dealing with personal characteristics at the time. The methods here, again, the information largely derived from text that I found. The population here gives an estimate of the Sicangu as 1804-5, Lewis and Clark. They only counted the men, just the men. But that's how they treated their own people. They didn't think that their women and children deserved to be counted. They didn't allow their women to vote. So they counted just the men here. In 1833, the next says there was 500 lodges. And so we're estimating about 5 to 7 people in a lodge. Now in 1833 to 50, Hayden says there were 300 men, and he counted just the men too. In 1839, Nicolay says there were 300 lodges. And so we're estimating again 5 to 7 people in a lodge. 1853, Vaughan estimated 150 lodges. 1856, Twist says there was 250 lodges. 1855 to 7, Warren says there was 480 lodges. 1858 to 69, Hayden says there was 3,000 overall. And these came from the handouts, population census of the Teton Lakota. Now the subsistence pattern here, very little information on rations issued to Spotted Tail's group in Rosebud. So I found virtually no documents to support any information regarding rations that were issued to our people here. In 1887, Congress cut the amount of beef, 470,400 pounds per month. The Sicangu were to receive approximately 2 million pounds, according to Hayden. A possibility was to look at other bands of Lakota to get a sense of how the government dealt with the meat rations to other Plains tribes. In December 1876, Crazy Horse's band was to receive 3 pounds of beef per person per day. At the time of surrender, his band numbered 899, 217 men, 312 women, 186 boys, and 184 girls. And that's the closest I got to any good data with with Crazy Horses Band. Now, here it was possible for groups of 30 people to put their rations together and receive one head, approximately 900 pounds to 1,000 pounds, depending on how big the beef was. But they did have cattle drives, and by the time the cattle got here, then they were pretty small. And this was approximately 900 pounds of beef for 10 days. This came from Paul Bucher. This estimation results in about 1 million pounds of meat per year for the entire band and 9 pounds of meat per person per day. Now let's look at 1900 to, at the time I did this, I did this research from 1900 to, it was 1997. And the historical context there, this era and time saw modifications to the reservation system. Nationwide economic depression in the 1920s brought state aid, they called it, in the form of food vouchers. And later on, it was called food stamps to the reservations. 30 years later, the commodity programs followed, and I got that from the South Dakota website. These programs are now the primary subsistence patterns for the Sicangu in the 20th century. So almost every household, will get either commodities or food stamps by 1997. The information obtained by personal contact and internet websites, the population at the time in 1997 was 18,995 estimated Sicangu living on a rosebud. And the subsistence, look at this. We got EBT total for Todd County in June 1997, 3.2 million in state aid, going to maybe $954 to each family. 3,520 families receive EBT accounts. And this was in June 1997. 6 people averaging $159 per person per month. And I got this information from personal communication. The Community Food Distribution Program, 13,172 families received commodities in 1997, and the total budget for that for 1997 was $451,495. And it went something like this: 168,976 pounds of canned meat, 59,473 pounds of frozen meat, 29,152 pounds of beans, totaling 257,601 totaling pounds of meat. Okay, this averaged out to 20 pounds average per household per 1 year. Now the dairy products, 370,816.5 pounds of milk at 24 ounces, 149,880 pounds of cheese, 16,207 pounds of butter, totaling up to 536,904 pounds. And that totaled up to 41 pounds average per household per year. And the fruit and vegetables, 192 pounds, canned fruits or vegetables, 21,667 pounds of prunes and raisins, 800,768 pounds of juice, totaling up to 1,380,000 pounds, and 627 pounds total. And that averaged out to 104 pounds per household per year. And the grains. Again, I'm not going to go over the numbers, but you can see for yourself. It totaled up to 533,000 pounds with 424 added on, 41 pounds average per household per year. And I did get this from Dallas Walk and Eagle, who at the time was director of the food program or the food distribution program. Now the conclusions. The United States is obligated to compensate the Sichango Oyate for destroying the economic basis which the Lakota had managed and maintained for thousands and thousands of years. We lived that way, and we did quite all right. Now, the United States acknowledged and began this relationship in the Marshall Trilogy Supreme Court cases. And it is very clear that the United States is in part responsible for the ancestors to the Northern Hemisphere. With the passage of time, the United States began to break their treaties and downplay their responsibilities to the Sichango Eyapi. The review of the above data gives evidence that the Sichango Eyapi have become very dependent on the state and federal government for subsistence, for food. This reliance has been going on since the 1800s, when the federal government in its negotiations agreed to ensure the longevity of the Sichango by providing beef rations and staple resources in lieu of the buffalo that they had killed off. From the very beginning, the government has manipulated the food ration systems to work against the Sichango and maintain economic dominance over the one-time self-sufficient people. So we did take care of ourselves. We were self-sufficient people at one time. In the 1800s, food rations were reduced and issued sparingly. In the 1900s, the system created a state of dependency for the majority of the Sichango people. The EBT system that we have going right now, it is questionable in its place within the Sichango nation. Even if the commodity and the EBT systems both were combined, and technically that's not possible, they would still fall short of the economic basis the Lakota had prior to the 1800s. So even if we got commodities and food stamps in our homes, we would still be falling short. So I concluded with the United States has not fulfilled the intent of the treaties signed by the Sichango Eyapi. And in this case, especially for the 1868 Treaty, Article 10. Oh, Hechegla, Pilamayapi.
We want to thank Ione for showing us what's possible through research. When we talk about problem solving, developing strategies for the future, we have the capability of our professionalism, and we have our Wolakota foundational values, and we have the laws and the policies. We can take a look at all of these, put them in a rational, well-organized, discussed manner, and we can develop a tremendous case for ourselves for the future. Just think of the treaties and the language that they state that the United States will honor. They practically took away a way of life, but we survived. Tremendous resilience. But now we have the opportunity to sit down together and bring all of our people together at all ages, whether it's through surveys, discussions, research, and sit down and systematically go through every aspect of daily activity that affects the quality of our life. We have that challenge and that charge. Ancestry did their job, did their part, and they're still doing it. It's what kept us going through prayer and ceremony and their memory. But now we've got generations to come. If we want to say that in 25,000 years from now, we're still here as a tribal people, as Sichagus, then we have our job cut out for us to pull together as we have been, but do it even more professionally, systematically, getting all of our people to the table to sit down and to plan for the future. It's a big, big challenge. It's going to require a lot of work and a lot of years, but we can do it. We have to summon up the will and the determination. Just think of what our ancestry what they went through in 1870, 1880, 1890, 1900. They had to wonder if they were going to survive, if there were going to be Lakotas left on the face of the earth in the years to come. And they did it. They pulled together. They did what they had to do. It had to have been very tough on them, very difficult. But they had us in mind, just like we have to have future generations in mind. And that's what our founders, Stanley Redbird Sr., Bill Menard, Isidore, as I've mentioned, Nancy, and the many who've committed to this institution in some fashion have become part of the Sichagu Eyapi and their commitment to Wicawotapi University. But we have a long way to go as an institution. But think how far we've come. Think of that building that we first started in Rosebud, back in the early 70s. Now we've got some beautiful facilities. 50 years is what we've done. Just imagine what this place will look like the next 50 years. That we're well on our way. A lot of things await us. These little ones that were in here earlier. There was one little one back there, 9 months old. Just think of what life's going to be for that person on Rosebud when that little one is 8 years old. The changes during that time, the development. Thanks in part to what St. English got back here, what he did. people who've lived the generations after him, people who are living today, people who are going to live in the future. It's a exciting, happy time. When I was listening to people talk about the treaty in the Black Hills, I'm reminded of a bull rider from Pine Ridge named Dugan LeBeau. Dugan wanted to work here. He wanted to do an early history of the early Rosebud Cowboys. So he developed a proposal, and he wanted me to read it. I was coming back from Washington, D.C. I was at the airport in Rapid City, and he come and he picked me up. And he said, Lionel, I've got a proposal I want you to take a look at. So we stopped at this little bar. The place was empty except for about half a dozen non-Indians standing up at the bar. We took a table way in back. It wasn't, pretty soon this one, half gassed up, Wocekiye guys started coming towards us. And he got a little bit owly. And he said, I suppose you're here to take back the Black Hills. So he said, sit down, let's talk about it. And he got very confrontational. We kept talking, at least I did. And pretty soon he said, I am going to sit down. He said, I've never had this kind of an invite. And I was amazed at what he said. The day before that, a senator from New Jersey, Bill Bradley, had come to Rapid City to talk about introducing legislation to return some of the land to the tribe. That's what this Wocekiye guy was reacting to. But when he started talking, he said, included himself and the people that were standing up at the bar. He said, we all know that the Black Hills belongs to the Lakota. We know that. He said, we've read the treaty. We know how dishonest the federal government was addressing this treaty, how they stole this land that was signed in good faith. And those treaties are recognized internationally, as you heard here earlier. But he said, we can't move. We can't leave here. He said, our homes are here, our schools are here, our businesses are here, our cemeteries are here. And we said, we just can't up and leave. But he said, we would like to correct the wrong that was done to tribal people. He said, if we had a delegation of tribal people come and talk that we could talk to, and they would represent all the tribes from where they come from. He said, we would be willing to sign a piece of paper stating that yes, we know the land that we live on still legally belongs to Lakotas. We would be willing to sign that paper. Furthermore, we would be willing to pay a lease or some kind of an annual rent for us to continue living in places like Rapid City, Spearfish, Belle Fourche, Hill City. I mean, I was flabbergasted. I was really in disbelief, but also overwhelmingly joyful to hear a young man, probably in his early 20s, say what he did and make it sound like he represented the majority of non-Indians living in the Black Hills. The next day, I went to see the bishop of the Catholic Church. He was part Lakota. His name was Bishop Charles Chaput. He's now an archbishop in Philadelphia. And hopefully, maybe one day, he'll be a cardinal, or who knows, maybe even the Pope. He said, Lionel, I've been waiting for somebody from the reservation to come and talk to me about this. Because he said, the people who are coming to my church are telling me the same thing, that they know that the Black Hills still belongs to Lakota, and they'd be willing to pay lease or rent for the homes where they live. He said, I'd be willing to put up church monies so we could hold some town hall meetings and bring the two cultures together to discuss what we can do to address the Black Hills together, where we can open up homes so that young people could have homes and live in the Black Hills. Tribal people can operate a business in the Black Hills. He said, they tell me that they would support these. There can be a school, a Lakota school in the Black Hills for our Indian students going to school in Rapid City and other places. So evidently, these things are possible if we approach them professionally. Go in there with prayer and ceremony and sit down and talk. And I know that we do it in the manner by which the diplomacy that we will need, it's doable. We can have a tribal university in the Black Hills. We can have our own businesses in the Black Hills. Our veterans. We can have a spiritual center in the Black Hills. We can have housing. It's doable. Let's take these guys up on what they're saying. But first, we need to sit down here and put these on the table here. That $1.3 billion that's sitting in a bank in our behalf. As Homer said, that can be used for back rent. Then we can work out a plan to get rent for the future. That's a big issue that we need to address. We can't let it sit there. But all of us need to come to the table. The people living here, the resource people, the educators, the elected tribal leaders, the elders, and our young ones, our little ones, our medicine men, spiritual leaders. We need to do this under the guidance of our spiritual leaders. But not just in this area, but as we've talked here, in all of our areas. These await us. Getting close to closing time. I think this evening we have over Lakota Studies building, Marlies Whitehead has come up with a couple films. The incredible 25th year of Mitzi Bear Claw. I don't know anything about these. And then one, Merata, how Mom decolonized the screen. I don't know what these are about. I think the last time I saw a show might have been Dancing with Wolves. But these start at 5:30. So everyone's welcome to come over and have some popcorn and attend a couple of movies. But do we have anybody else say anything in closing before we ask for a closing prayer? But if not, again, we thank everybody for listening in, regardless of where you're from. We appreciate your support. Continue to think good about us. Send your prayers in our direction. On occasion, we won't reject a donation that you might send in behalf of our people, our students, scholarships, pay raise for our faculty or our staff, maybe a donation to help repair our buildings. So we thank the people living far and wide for your recognition of St. Teklishka University. We look forward to working with you all in partnership or through prayer. The people of the community here, Opilat Khanka, Onkeni Chapelo, Onkila Zata Tohonia Kia, Shagya, Najib Chasoloya, Opila. We thank the communities for always supporting education and supporting St. Teklishka University. We need you. We need that support. But more so also, we need your ideas. We need the recommendations that you have. What are the things that you think that we should be teaching? How might we improve what we're doing? We want to hear from you. So I thank all of our Roger and Pauline, Dr. John and Cheryl for your recording and your videoing. We thank Leonard and his family here. Thanks Stanley Jr., Homer Opilalo, and we thank the students. So any closing remarks? Wocekiye Eyapi. We'll ask Stanley Redbird Jr. to say a closing prayer.
Aya wopila chichapelo dona anagupta nakam na tiata anagupta nakam na naku ya wopila thanka hecha oya khala petu ki Wolakota ikchechasha Wolakota iwoglakam oya kha hecha waya wakati yawa yaha hiupi. Oyong ka wachok ang kila na chanupa wa trokea yake. Ohi gusto pinaan wachok ang kila na kia pina wastil gana ho yuha najing hiya pina ha hot hakpab. Okra hachikchi leampetu ki leksyon hacha. Hochok ang kanya hacha wogalaka picha anagupto yankap. Ayakopta, ayopta, hecher. Agya, ikchewicha shatron, truyukcha. Holena, iwogala kapina hato ker, ikchewicha shakit hokata kya, unkiwash akapina ha, unkiglo haktik on lena, hunre, lel yina yayapunka, ihankya wopila athanka hecha. Oyong kale na wons pe wakati akile ichuna ha. Obons pe kia ale nungoya pik on le na koya. Le na soloya pe no kyo kakhni kapi. Oyong ka hechechchi eapicha. Trokata kia. Ikchecha sha Lakota sichango yati kile. Chayong pinong kiwas akakta hechi wo Lakota kile. Yitima honke kikchupina ha gluha awicha kaya trokata kya yuha manu kya punka ho ikchicha sa sichaku kile ake umas akapiktelo. Watachechchi mu spemakatia ithacha lena wopla ewakil lena unach unaha woya kikile na ikchicha sa ptoyal oyate yaletska kile na Hunu pakilena kiwas akapina chanta wastepi. Watalan petuki wopila unkapelo. Wacha tukashila petu unkigrushtapina. Dako ota ikche chashat hawo uphe unaha wola khota. Lena mila haskop ka khapik ohana wogala kapina tuktogana thokata ka wastena has age unkia apiktike. Woywan ke wa ake achanku ya hina jipunka ikchecha sha umas akapiktelo na iwas akapena trokata ke wo hier tranka kach moni pikte chatok pernia ohina jipelo unshulapo metake oyas.
Well, take care, drive safely, and stay warm. And Doksha, we'll see you again tomorrow. Tomorrow we start off with health, and we'll get into social services, family, youth, and elders. Ashte, Doksha. Love you all, and take care, and love each other. Opila.